Prince Harry's future in America potentially hangs in the balance tonight after his US visa application papers were dramatically handed over to a federal judge. The Duke is embroiled in a bitter row over whether he lied about previous drug use when entering the United States in March 2020. In his tell-all memoir, Spare, Harry admitted using cocaine, cannabis and magic mushrooms. Acknowledging past drug use does not automatically result in a visa rejection, but the US-based Heritage Foundation, spearheaded by Margaret Thatcher's former advisor Neil Gardner, says the US government either looked the other way if it answered truthfully about drug use or looked the other way if he lied. The Heritage Foundation argues either action would be wrong. The Department for Homeland Security has so far refused to make Harry's visa application public, and a US judge ordered the Biden administration to explain why. Well, it's now reported tonight that Judge Carl Nichols now has Harry's visa application in full and is expected to decide whether it is made public in the near future. Charlotte Griffiths, the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, joins us now. Charlotte, thank you very, very much. A big development in Prince Harry's deportation battle, isn't it?
It's a big development, and I'm actually amazed we got here because this feels like it's been rumbling on for months and months. And at first it felt like a bit of a stunt from the Heritage Foundation. You know, they did the Freedom of Information request, and would this really lead to anything? But this moment's really big because it's actually led to something. Like, this is actually really happening now. And there's actually been a 2-week delay to all of this. So it's a big moment that finally they've got these papers.
And conceivably, what could happen then? So Harry presumably could be at some point put on a plane back to Britain and forced to stay here?
I think the most likely thing that will happen is A, Harry's going to be feeling very anxious somewhere in Montecito right now and for the next few days, and B, it's going to be really embarrassing because they've already hinted that his defence might be that he lied about drug use in Spare, because the DHS has already said, look, just because he said he took drugs in Spare doesn't mean that he actually did. You know, we all know that he was trying to sell copies of his book. So I imagine that before deportation, there might be some sort of embarrassing climb down. I have to say, I can't personally imagine a world in which Harry is deported in a very public and embarrassing manner. However, when Kate Moss and Amy Winehouse tried to get a visa for America, they were in fact rejected because of their known drug use. So we'll have to see what happens. But
that's a good point. And, you know, Harry obviously likes to repent for his privilege now at every single opportunity. And maybe he has used that privilege, or has been allowed to use that privilege anyway, in order to go and reside in the United States. I mean, it was there in black and white. So essentially, he either lied about the drug use in his book Spare, you know, the US government appears to have looked the other way, or he lied on his visa application.
Yeah, and it's so ironic, isn't it, that in Spare, I mean, the whole of Spare is about how hard done by he is and how he's not actually that privileged because his brother gets all the privilege. And yet it's actually this book Spare that's getting him in so much trouble, because it seems like perhaps he was chancing his luck, or he thought he'd get away with it. But, you know, that's just not the case. He's a serious public figure, and he's admitted to drug use in a book whilst living in America.
What would you say to some people who say, look, this is just a gratuitous witch hunt, and the irony of what the Heritage Foundation is doing is that they actually don't really want him back in the UK anyway, to be honest?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That is a very good point. But it does feel a bit witch hunty, but it's an important symbolic point here because, you know, if I was Kate Moss over here in the UK, she didn't go to the US for 10 years, and that's widely known. I'd be feeling pretty peeved if I were her. She lost out on a lot of work over in the States because she was obviously an international model. So, you know, like so many of these things, it's often about the principle as well. And, you know, sure, there's a witch hunt, but was it invited? I think it probably was, because Harry's, you know, written about this in a book to sell books to make money.
Yeah, and all of this could change as well under President Trump, if that ever happens in November time. I just wonder what the reaction will be like to Harry. Let's just say that the worst case for Harry happens and, you know, he is forced back to Britain. I suppose he could go somewhere else, to be fair, isn't it? It's not, his only other option is not here in Britain. But what would the reaction be, do you think, to him here? Would it be a potential opportunity for a bit of a mea culpa and a return, you know, and a resurrection, like a phoenix from the ashes?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but tonight stories have started leaking online about how Harry misses the UK and he's desperate to come over. And these kind of stories are starting to leak out for the first time in a really long time. or in fact ever, because the narrative's always been he's so pleased to be away from this hellhole England that he grew up in. But, these stories are starting to get out. So I do think there could be a world in which Harry might return. But if I was advising him, I'd say mea culpa is what he needs, because this country actually loved Harry back in the day. We loved him, and the more mistakes he made, the more we tended to love him. It's these hypocritical mistakes that get people so riled up. So I think if he did a full mea culpa, and if he was here to look after his dad, that might help as well.
That's fascinating, though. It's really fascinating what you see, because this story broke not long before we came on air. I haven't had a chance to see what the online reaction has been yet, but already we're seeing them sowing the seeds, always saying, oh, Harry misses Great Britain, he misses the UK. It's home, really, for him. Now, that is fascinating and potentially quite telling, Charlotte.
Yeah, I keep an eye out for stories in the next, especially coming from People magazine, any of those US publications that Meghan's got a sort of friendship with. Keep an eye on them, because I wouldn't be surprised if this narrative grows and grows and grows, and is often around, looking after his dad or taking up some royal duties again one day. I can see this happening.
Well, Charlotte, thank you very, very much for joining us tonight. Really great to have you on. Charlotte Griffiths there, the editor-at-large and the Mail on Sunday.